The Serenity's edge moved through space like a silent shadow. Its hull was made of materials that bent light around them. No one could see it coming. Commander Zix-4471 stood on the bridge and watched the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. His 4 arms moved across the control panels with practiced ease. This was his 300th survey mission. He expected this one to be just like all the others. The ship's computers had been studying this solar system for weeks. The 3rd planet showed signs of intelligent life. Radio signals bounced around the planet's surface. Simple chemical rockets burned bright trails through the atmosphere. The beings down there were using nuclear power in crude ways. All the signs pointed to a young species just starting to reach for the stars. Maintain position at 200,000 kilometers, Zix-4471 told his crew. Begin standard observation protocols. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. 3 other beings worked at different stations. Kella 9928 was from the crystal mine species. Her transparent body caught the light from the screens. As she studied the planet's communication signals, Thorpe Beta 7 represented the machine collective. His metal frame clicked softly as he processed data about the planet's technology. Dr. Yuna belonged to the Peaceful Walkers. Her 6 legs carried her between stations as she prepared the cultural analysis reports. Commander, Kella 9928 said in her musical voice, the beings down there call themselves humans. They use audio-based language with thousands of different variations. Very primitive but interesting, ZYX-4471 nodded. This was normal. Young species always had complex languages before they learned telepathy or digital communication. What about their technology level? Thorpe Beta 7's mechanical voice answered, basic nuclear fission. Simple computers using electrical circuits. Chemical propulsion for space travel. They have placed a few small stations in orbit around their planet. Standard development pattern for a Type 0 civilization. Dr. Yina made a soft sound of agreement. Their social structure shows the usual pre-unification chaos. Multiple competing groups, some cooperation but much conflict. They will need at least 500 years before they are ready for galactic contact. The commander smiled with 2 of his mouths. This was exactly what he expected. The Galactic Council would add this species to the watch list. In a few centuries, when the humans had learned to live in peace and developed proper space travel, they might be invited to join galactic civilization. Until then, the survey ship would make its notes and move on to the next system. Begin deep scans of their major population centers, ZYX-4471 ordered. I want complete records of their development level. The Council will want detailed reports. The ship's powerful sensors reached out toward Earth. They could see through buildings and count individual beings from space. The humans would never know they were being watched. This was how first contact always worked. The advanced species observed the primitive ones until they were ready to join the galaxy. But something was wrong. Kella-9928 single quotes. Voice carried a note of confusion. Commander, I am detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface. Several of their military installations have activated what appear to be tracking systems. Tracking systems? Zix-4471 turned to look at her station. What kind of tracking systems? Unknown. They are using a combination of electromagnetic sensors and something else I cannot identify. The signals are very focused and seem to be searching the space around our position. Thorpe Beta 7's mechanical head turned toward the commander. Probability that they can detect our ship is less than 0.01%. Our stealth technology is millions of years more advanced than their senses. Dr. Yina moved closer to the main screen. Her large eyes studied the planet below. Perhaps they are conducting some kind of military exercise. Young species often practice war games. The commander felt the first stirring of concern. In 300 missions, primitive species had never shown any awareness of his ship. The stealth systems were perfect. They had to be. The Galactic Council used this same technology to observe species across the entire galaxy. Maintain position, he said. Continue scans. Monitor their communications for any sign that they know we are here. For the next 6 hours, the crew worked in growing confusion. The humans below seemed to be tracking something in space near the survey ship's position. Their military forces were moving. Large installations were powering up systems that looked like weapons. Radio chatter between their military units was increasing. Kella 9928 translated some of the human communications. They are using terms like unidentified object and unknown contact, Commander. I believe they are aware of our presence. Impossible, ZYX4471 said, but his voice was less certain now. Run full diagnostics on all stealth systems. The ships. Computers checked every system twice. Everything was working perfectly. The Serenity's edge was invisible to any technology this primitive species could possibly have. Yet the evidence was clear. The humans knew something was out here. Commander, Thorpe Beta 7 said, multiple human installations are now tracking the same point in space. Their tracking data matches our exact position to within 50 meters. The bridge fell silent. This had never happened before. In all the records of the Galactic Council, no primitive species had ever detected a survey ship. It was not possible with their level of technology. Dr. Yuna spoke quietly. Perhaps we should withdraw and report this to the Council. Before the commander could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Bright red lights flashed on every control panel. The ship's defensive systems activated automatically. What is happening? ZYX4471 demanded. Thorpe-Beta-7 single quotes S voice was filled with electronic confusion. Commander, the humans have launched an object toward our position. It appears to be some kind of missile. On the main screen, a bright point of light was rising from the planet's surface. It moved faster than the crude chemical rockets they had observed earlier. Much faster. How long until it reaches us? The commander asked. At current speed, approximately 47 minutes, Thorpe Beta 7 replied. But Commander, this is impossible. Their missiles should not be able to reach this distance. And even if they could, they would have no way to target us. Zix 4471 stared at the approaching missile. His mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be unaware of the survey ship. They were supposed to be harmless. What kind of warhead is that missile carrying? He asked. KELA-9928 single quotes. As crystalline body grew darker as she processed the data. Nuclear fusion warhead. Estimated. Yield of 50 million tons equivalent. Commander, if that weapon detonates near our ship, it could cause significant damage to our systems. Significant damage? Dr. Yuna's 6 legs carried her quickly across the bridge. Our shields can handle any primitive nuclear weapon. Normally, yes, Thorpe Beta 7 said. But our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and particle beams. A nuclear explosion at close range would create electromagnetic pulses and high energy. Particles and patterns our shields are not optimized to handle. The commander felt something he had never experienced in his long career. Fear. Not just concern or confusion, but actual fear. The humans had done something that should have been impossible. They had detected his ship. They had targeted his ship. And now they had sent a weapon that could actually threaten his ship. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Move us away from that missile. The Serenity's edge began to move, its advanced engines pushing it away from Earth. But the missile changed course to follow them. Somehow, the primitive human weapon was tracking their movements. How are they doing this? ZYX4471 asked. How can a primitive missile track our ship? Unknown, Thorpe Beta 7 replied. Their technology should not be capable of this level of precision. The missile continued to climb toward them. On the planet below, more military installations were activating. The humans were preparing something. The survey ship's sensors detected energy buildups at dozens of locations around the planet. Commander, Kella 9928 said, The humans are preparing to launch additional missiles. At least 12 more launch sites are showing ready status. The reality of the situation hit the commander like a physical blow. The humans were not acting like a primitive species. They were acting like a military force. They had detected his ship. They had targeted his ship. And now they were preparing to attack his ship with multiple weapons. This was not how first contact was supposed to happen. Advanced species made contact when primitive species were ready. The primitive species were supposed to be peaceful and grateful. They were supposed to welcome the advanced beings as teachers and guides. The humans were doing none of these things. Instead, they were treating the Galactic Council survey ship as a threat. They were responding with military force. They were acting like they were at war. Time to missile impact? The commander asked. 38 minutes and counting, Thorpe Beta 7 replied. ZYX4471 looked at his crew. 3 advanced beings from 3 different species, all looking at him with confusion and growing fear. None of them had any experience with this kind of situation. None of them knew what to do when a primitive species fought back. Open communication. Channels, the commander said finally. All frequencies. Broadcast standard first contact protocols. The ship's communication systems reached out toward Earth. They sent mathematical sequences, star maps, and peaceful greeting messages in every format the humans might understand. The same messages that had successfully opened dialogue with hundreds of species across the galaxy. The response from Earth was immediate, but it was not what they expected. Instead of wonder and excitement, the human communications were filled with demands. They wanted to know who the aliens were. They wanted to know why they were here. They wanted to know what they wanted. And above all, they demanded that the alien ship identify itself immediately or face the consequences. The missile continued to climb toward them. On the planet below, more weapons were being prepared. The humans were not acting like any species the Galactic Council had ever encountered. They were acting like they expected trouble, like they were ready for war, like they had been waiting for this moment. Commander ZYX4471 realized that everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about first contact might be wrong. The humans were not grateful for the attention of advanced beings. They were suspicious and aggressive. They saw the survey ship not as a gift from the stars, but as a threat to be eliminated. For the first time in his long career, the commander wondered if his ship was going to survive this encounter. The humans had already proven they could do impossible things. What else might they be capable of? The missile was still climbing. Time was running out. And somewhere below, an entire planet of warriors was watching and waiting to see what the aliens would do next. Captain Sarah Chun strapped herself into the shuttle as it prepared to dock with the alien ship. 3 days had passed since the tense standoff that almost ended in violence. The alien vessel had finally responded to Earth's demands for communication. After their missile came within 10 kilometers of its hull. Now, both sides were trying something that neither had planned for during first contact. Sarah looked at her team. Lieutenant Rodriguez sat across from her, checking his sidearm for the 3rd time. Dr. Kim was reviewing her notes about alien psychology. Sergeant Williams was quiet, but his eyes were constantly moving, studying every detail of the shuttle's interior. They were all soldiers first, diplomats second. That was not how the aliens expected this to work. Remember, Sarah said to her team, they invited us aboard their ship because they think we are primitive. They want to study us like animals in a zoo. Let them think that for now, but stay ready. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Through the airlock came a sound like music mixed with static. The aliens were talking to each other in their own language. The translation device in Sarah's ear turned their words into English, but the voices still sounded strange. The airlock opened. Sarah stepped through first, followed by her team. The alien ship was beautiful in a way that made her feel uncomfortable. Everything was smooth and curved. The walls seemed to glow with their own light. The air smelled like flowers and metal at the same time. Commander ZYX4471 was waiting for them. Sarah had seen his image on the communication screens, but seeing him in person was different. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His large eyes looked at her with curiosity and something that might have been pity. "Welcome aboard the Serenity's Edge," the commander said. His voice came through her translator as calm and educated. "I am Commander 64471 of the Ethereal Collective. We represent the Galactic Council." Sarah saluted in the human military fashion. "Captain Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Force, thank you for agreeing to this meeting." The commander's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Yes, well, this is highly unusual. Normally, when we contact with a developing species, we speak with their scientists or their leaders. We do not expect to meet with their military forces." "On Earth, the military protects the scientists and leaders," Sarah replied. "When unknown ships appear in our space, we respond with military units first. That is how we stay safe." Dr. Yina, one of the other aliens, moved closer on her 6 legs. She was shorter than the commander and covered in soft fur that changed colors as she moved. "But surely your species must have evolved past the need for constant military readiness?" "All civilized species learn to resolve conflicts through reason and cooperation." Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke before Sarah could stop him. "Ma'am, with respect, the universe is a dangerous place. There are always people who want to take what others have built. The only way to keep peace is to be ready for war." The aliens looked at each other with expressions that Sarah could not read. The third alien, Thorpe Beta 7, was clearly a machine intelligence of some kind. His metal body reflected the ship's lights as he spoke. "This is fascinating," Thorpe Beta 7 said. "In our database of over 10,000 species, military thinking usually disappears within the first 1,000 years of civilization. Your species has maintained warrior instincts far longer than normal. Maybe that is why we are still alive." Sergeant Williams said quietly. Commander DJ64471 gestured with 2 of his arms toward a corridor. "Please come with us. We would like to show you how civilized species handle conflict resolution. Perhaps you can learn from our methods." As they walked through the ship, Sarah noticed details that her training had taught her to see. The corridors were wide and open, with no defensive positions. There were no security cameras that she could identify. The doors seemed to open automatically for anyone who approached them. Everything about the ship suggested that the aliens had never considered the possibility of fighting aboard their own vessel. They entered a large room that the commander called the Cultural Exchange Center. It had comfortable chairs arranged in a circle and screens on the walls, showing images of different planets and species. Everything was designed to make visitors feel welcome and safe. "This is where we normally conduct first contact meetings," Dr. Yina explained. "We find that most species respond well to a peaceful academic environment." "It is very nice," Dr. Kim said diplomatically. "But I notice you do not have any security measures. What happens if a first contact goes wrong?" The aliens looked confused by the question. Commander 64471's 4 arms moved in what might have been a shrug. "Goes wrong? We have conducted over 8,000 first contact missions. None have ever gone wrong, as you put it." "You have been lucky," Sarah said. "Lucky?" The commander seemed genuinely puzzled. "No, Captain Chun, it is not luck. Civilized species do not attack without reason. When we offer knowledge and friendship, they accept gratefully. This is how the galaxy works." Lieutenant Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair. "But what if a species does not want your friendship? What if they see you as invaders?" "That does not happen," Dr. Yina said with certainty. "All intelligent species eventually learn that cooperation is better than conflict. It is a natural part of evolution." Sergeant Williams made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Ma'am, on Earth we have a saying, 'Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.'" Thorpe Beta 7's mechanical head tilted to one side. "Interesting. Our analysis suggests that your species has an unusually high level of what you call paranoia. You seem to expect danger even when none exists." "The danger existed 3 days ago," Sarah pointed out. "If we had not been watching for threats, we would not have detected your ship. If we had not been prepared to defend ourselves, you could have studied us for years without us knowing." "But we meant no harm," Commander Zix4471 protested. "We were simply observing your development. This is standard procedure." "You were spying on us," Lieutenant Rodriguez said bluntly. "Without our permission. In our space. How is that different from a military reconnaissance mission?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Sarah could see that the aliens had never thought about their surveys in those terms. To them, watching primitive species was a kindness, like parents watching children play. They could not understand why anyone would object. Dr. Yuna broke the silence. "Perhaps we could demonstrate our conflict resolution techniques? We have a training simulation that might interest you." They moved to another room filled with advanced computers and holographic displays. The aliens called it their diplomatic training center. They used it to practice first contact scenarios and conflict mediation. "We will show you a typical problem that we might encounter," Commander Zix4471 explained. "Two species are fighting over resources on a planet. Our job is to find a peaceful solution." The holographic display showed a planet with two different cities. The aliens explained that one species needed a mineral for their technology, while the other species considered the same mineral sacred and would not allow mining. The conflict had been going on for hundreds of years. "How would your species handle this situation?" Dr. Yun asked. Sarah studied the hologram for a moment. "I would need more information. Who was on the planet first? What are the exact terms of the dispute? What has been tried before? Are there other sources of this mineral?" "Those details do not matter," Commander Zix4471 said. "The goal is to find a solution that satisfies both sides." "The details always matter," Sergeant Williams said. "You cannot solve a problem if you do not understand it completely." Lieutenant Rodriguez was studying the display from a different angle. "This mineral, where exactly is it located on the planet?" Thorpe Beta 7 highlighted several areas on the hologram. "Here, here, and here. The largest deposit is under the sacred city of the first species." "That is the key to the problem," Sarah said. "The second species does not just want the mineral. They want the mineral that is under the first species' most important city. That is not about resources. That is about conquest." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Dr. Yuna's fur changed to a darker color. "Conquest? No, you misunderstand. Both species are civilized. They do not think in terms of conquest." "Then why have they been fighting for hundreds of years?" Dr. Kim asked. "If both sides truly wanted peace, they would have found a solution by now." "Some problems are complicated," Commander Zix4471 said defensively. Sarah stood up and walked around the holographic planet. Her military training was showing her things the aliens could not see. "Show me the military forces of both species." "Military forces?" Thorpe Beta 7 sounded confused. "These are not military species. They resolved conflicts through diplomacy." "Then who has been doing the fighting for hundreds of years?" Sergeant Williams asked. The aliens became quiet. Finally, Dr. Yuna spoke. "There have been some incidents, some violence, but nothing that could be called real warfare." "Show us the incidents," Sarah ordered. The hologram changed to display news reports and records of conflicts between the two species. As Sarah's team studied the data, a picture emerged that the aliens had been trying to ignore. One species was systematically pushing the other species away from valuable resources. They used economic pressure, political manipulation, and when necessary, targeted violence. It was a slow conquest disguised as a resource dispute. "This is not about minerals," Sarah said finally. "This is about one species trying to take control of another species' planet. They are using the mineral dispute as an excuse." "That is impossible," Commander Zix4471 insisted. "Both species are members of the Galactic Council. They would not engage in conquest." Lieutenant Rodriguez was reading through more of the records. "Captain, look at this. The attacking species has been settling refugees in strategic locations around the planet. They are surrounding the defenders." Sarah nodded. "It was a classic military strategy." "How would you solve this problem, Commander?" We would negotiate. A fair sharing agreement for the mineral resources, the commander replied immediately. And when the attacking species breaks that agreement? Sergeant Williams asked. They would not break it. It would be a formal treaty. Treaties are just pieces of paper, Sarah said. They only work when both sides want them to work. In this case, one side is lying about what they really want. Dr. Yuna's fur turned bright red. You cannot know that you are assuming the worst about both species. I am looking at the evidence, Sarah replied. The evidence shows a pattern of aggression disguised as legitimate grievances. On Earth, we call this salami slicing. You take a little bit at a time, always with a good excuse, until you have taken everything. Sarah turned to face all three. Aliens, you want to know how humans would solve this problem? We would tell the attacking species to stop their expansion immediately. We would give the defending species weapons to protect themselves. And we would make it clear that any further aggression would be met with force. The aliens looked horrified. Commander Zix-4471's forearms moved in agitation. That would lead to warfare. Many beings would die. Many beings are already dying, Lieutenant Rodriguez pointed out. They are just dying slowly while you pretend it is not warfare. Sometimes, Sarah said quietly, the fastest way to end a conflict is to make the cost of fighting higher than the cost of peace. Bullies do not stop when you ask them nicely. They stop when someone makes them stop. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Thorpe Beta 7 spoke. Your approach is very different from ours. Your approach does not work, Sergeant Williams said bluntly. This conflict has been going on for hundreds of years because you will not admit what is really happening. Dr. Yina moved closer to Sarah. But if we use military force, are we not becoming the same as the aggressors? No, Sarah said. There is a difference between attacking the innocent and protecting the innocent. A good soldier knows the difference. Commander Zix-4471 looked at the holographic planet, then at the human soldiers. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I must ask you a difficult question. If your species were to join our civilization, would you bring this warrior mentality with you? Sarah smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Commander, you have already seen what happens when humans encounter a potential threat. We do not run away. We do not pretend the threat does not exist. We face it directly. If that frightens you, maybe you should think about why. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that Sarah was beginning to recognize as fear. They were starting to understand that humanity was not like the other species they had encountered. Humans did not automatically assume that everyone else was peaceful and reasonable. The galaxy was about to learn that there were beings who prepared for war even while hoping for peace. And those beings were very, very good at war. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Floating jellyfish-like creatures from the void-touched species shared space with towering crystal beings from the silicon mines. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages as the council members discussed the human problem. Hi, Counselor Rathmaran of the Ancient Builders spoke first. Her species had been spacefaring for over 10 million years. Her voice carried the weight of eons as she addressed the assembly. The humans present us with a unique challenge, she said. They have military capabilities that far exceed their technological development. They think in ways that our models cannot predict. The question before us is simple. Do we welcome them into galactic civilization, or do we classify them as a threat to be contained? Murmurs filled the chamber. Many species had never encountered a situation like this. For millions of years, the process was always the same. Primitive. Species were observed until they became peaceful and wise. Then they were invited to join the galaxy. The humans had skipped the peaceful and wise part entirely. Counselor Vex Alpha Prime of the Machine Collective processed data for 0.3 seconds. Before speaking, our analysis suggests the humans are too dangerous for immediate integration. Their aggressive tendencies and unpredictable behavior patterns could destabilize established peace treaties across 17 sectors. A soft voice came from the healer. outcast representative. Perhaps they simply need time to learn our ways. All species can evolve beyond their primitive instincts with proper guidance. High Counselor Rathmaran raised one of her 6 arms for silence. There's a way to test them. We have used it before when a species showed unusual characteristics. The trial of Kepler 442b, the chamber fell quiet. Every being present knew about Kepler 442b. It was the testing ground where species proved they were ready for galactic citizenship. The planet had been locked in civil war for over 300 years. 2 intelligent species shared the world but could not share its resources. Dozens of diplomatic missions had failed to bring peace. The trial is simple, Rathmaran continued. We send the humans to mediate the conflict on Kepler 442b. If they can bring peace using civilized methods, we will welcome them as full members of the Galactic Council. If they resort to their violent tendencies, we will know they are not ready for galactic society. Counselor Zen Theta of the Peaceful Wanderers spoke up. What if they refuse to take the trial? Then we classify them as a potential threat and establish a quarantine around their solar system, Rathmaran replied. No species has ever refused the trial. The vote was unanimous. The humans would be given a chance to prove themselves worthy of galactic civilization. But privately many council members expected them to fail. The trial was designed to test wisdom and patience. The humans had shown neither quality. 3 days later, Colonel Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human transport ship. Determination as it approached Kepler 442b, he had been chosen to lead the human team for the trial. Unlike Captain John, who was a frontline combat officer, Rodriguez had experience in peacekeeping operations and military intelligence. What do we know about this situation? He asked his intelligence officer, Major Kim Park. 2 species, Colonel, the Kythera and the Zephyrians. They have been fighting over water rights and mineral deposits for 3 centuries. The Kythera control the northern continent. The Zephyrians control the southern continent. Both sides claim. The other started the conflict. Rodriguez studied the holographic display showing the planet. What have the previous diplomatic missions tried? Standard Galactic Council procedures, sir. Resource sharing agreements. Cultural exchange programs. Neutral mediation zones. Nothing has worked for more than a few months before fighting breaks out again. Lieutenant Sarah Voss, the team's communications specialist, looked up from her station. Colonel, I have been monitoring transmissions from the planet. Both sides are still actively fighting. 3 major battles in the last week. Rodriguez nodded. The aliens expected him to walk into an active war zone and somehow talk both sides into permanent peace. They probably expected him to fail within days. Major Kim, I want a full intelligence assessment. Not just what the Galactic Council told us. I want to know what is really happening down there. For the next 6 hours, Rodriguez's team worked. Like a military intelligence unit rather than a diplomatic mission. They intercepted communications, analyzed troop movements, and studied supply lines. They tracked financial records and identified key leaders on both sides. They mapped out the real power structures behind the official governments. What they found was not what the Galactic Council had described. Major Kim presented their findings to the team. Colonel, this is not a simple resource dispute. This is a proxy war. Both sides are being supplied by off-world criminal organizations. The Kythera are getting weapons from the Shadowfin Syndicate. The Zephyrians are being armed by the Red Star Cartel. Why? Rodriguez asked. The planet sits on one of the major hyperspace shipping routes between 3 galactic sectors. Whoever controls Kepler 442b can charge tolls on all shipping traffic. The criminal organizations want to keep the planet weak and divided so they can eventually take control themselves. Rodriguez felt the familiar anger that came when he saw innocent people being used by those with power. So the Galactic Council has been trying to mediate a fake war for 300 years? It gets worse, sir, Lieutenant Voss added. I found communications showing that representatives from both criminal organizations have been sabotaging peace talks. Every time the Kythera and Zephyrians get close to an agreement, something happens to restart the fighting. Rodriguez stood quietly for a moment, thinking. The Galactic Council expected him to solve this problem using their methods. Peaceful negotiation, cultural understanding, gradual trust building. All the things that had failed for 3 centuries. Because the real problem was being ignored. Major Kim, I want detailed intelligence on both criminal organizations. Base locations, supply routes, command structure, everything. Lieutenant Voss, start intercepting their communications. I want to know every move they make. Colonel, Major Kim said carefully, the Galactic Council expects us to focus on mediating between the Kithra and Zephyrians. They might not approve of us targeting the criminal organizations, Rodriguez smiled grimly. The Galactic Council asked us to bring peace to this planet. They did not specify how we should do it. Over the next 48 hours, Rodriguez's team worked with military precision. They established secure communications with moderate leaders on both sides of the conflict. They shared intelligence about the criminal organizations with both the Kithra and Zephyrian governments. They identified the key saboteurs who had been disrupting peace talks for decades, but Rodriguez did not stop there. While his diplomatic team worked with the local governments, his intelligence team tracked down the off-world criminal bases. Using information gathered from intercepted communications, they located the main Shadowfin Syndicate depot on a moon in the next star system. The Red Star cartel was operating from an asteroid base in the outer system. Rodriguez called his senior officers together for a briefing. Gentlemen, we have a choice. We can spend the next few years trying to negotiate peace while criminal organizations sabotage our efforts. Or we can remove the criminals first and then help the local species work out their differences. Captain Torres, his military advisor, grinned. I vote for option 2, Colonel. The Galactic Council will not be happy if we start shooting, Major Kim warned. The Galactic Council has been failing at this mission for 300 years, Rodriguez replied. I think they will forgive us if we succeed. The operation began at dawn on the 3rd day. While Rodriguez met with leaders from both species on the planet's surface, human special forces teams launched simultaneous strikes against both criminal bases. The attacks were swift and precise. The criminals had grown comfortable after years of operating without interference. They were not prepared for the human approach to problem-solving. At the same time, Rodriguez presented evidence of criminal manipulation to both the Kithra and Zephyrian governments. He showed them communications, proving that their centuries of war had been orchestrated by outsiders who wanted to keep them weak. He revealed the identities of the saboteurs who had been working within their own governments. The reaction was immediate and explosive. But instead of anger toward each other, both species directed their fury at the criminals who had been using them. Within hours, joint Ithero-Zephyrian security forces were rounding up known criminal agents on the planet's surface. By the end of the week, the Shadowfin Syndicate and Red Star cartel operations in the system had been completely destroyed. The criminal bases were reduced to wreckage floating in space. The saboteurs who had been preventing peace for centuries were in prison. And for the first time in 300 years, representatives from both species were sitting down to negotiate. Without anyone working to undermine their efforts, the peace talks took only 6 days. Without criminal interference, the Kithra and Zephyrians quickly discovered that their fundamental interests were not actually in conflict. They both wanted security for their people and prosperity for their worlds. The resource disputes that had seemed impossible to resolve were suddenly manageable when both sides were negotiating in good faith. Rodriguez stood in the Determinations briefing room as he prepared his report for the Galactic Council. His mission had taken 12 days from start to finish. The longest part had been identifying the real problem. Once they understood what was actually happening, the solution was straightforward. Major Kim entered the room carrying a datapad. Colonel, we just received a message from the Galactic Council. High Counselor Rathmaran wants to know how we brought peace to Kepler 442b so quickly. What did you tell her? Rodriguez asked. The truth, sir. We identified the real cause of the conflict and eliminated it. Rodriguez nodded. The aliens would probably be shocked by how simple it had been. they had spent centuries trying to solve. The wrong problem because they could not imagine that someone might be deliberately maintaining the conflict for profit. Any word from the planet? He asked. Lieutenant Voss looked up from her communication station. Both governments have signed a formal peace treaty. They are also discussing a mutual defense pact to prevent future outside interference. And Colonel, they want to send representatives to Earth to thank us personally. Rodriguez felt satisfaction at a job well done. But he also felt something else, concern. The Galactic Council had been completely blind to the real situation on Kepler 442b. If they could miss something this obvious, what other problems were they failing to solve across the galaxy? Sir, Major Kim said, there is something else. I intercepted some communications between Galactic Council members. They are discussing whether our methods were too aggressive. Aggressive? Rodriguez laughed. We stopped a 300-year war in 12 days without a single civilian casualty. If that is aggressive, I wonder what they call effective. As the determination began its journey back to Earth, Rodriguez wondered what the Galactic Council would decide about humanity. They had asked for a demonstration of human problem-solving abilities. They had gotten exactly that. The question was whether they would be wise enough to appreciate what they had seen. In the Great Chamber of the Galactic Council, the debate was already beginning. Some members were impressed by the swift resolution of a centuries-old conflict. Others were alarmed by the human willingness to use military force against criminal organizations without seeking permission first. But on Kepler 442b, for the first time in 300 years, children from both species were playing together. In the neutral zones, the shooting had stopped. The peace was real, and it had taken a species of warriors to make it happen. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. For the first time in 50,000 years, every species in the galaxy had sent representatives. The Great Chamber was packed beyond capacity. Emergency holographic. Projectors displayed the images of beings who could not physically attend. High Counselor Rathmaran stood at the center of the chamber. Her ancient face showed fear that she had not felt in millennia. Behind her, massive screens displayed the latest reports from the galactic rim. Red zones spread across star maps like a plague. Entire solar systems marked as lost contact or presumed consumed. Fellow beings of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying across the chamber through thousands of translation devices. We face an enemy unlike any we have encountered in our recorded history. The species we call the Devourers have consumed 17 star systems in the past 6 months. Every fleet we have sent to stop them has been destroyed or absorbed into their collective. A representative from the crystal mind species spoke first. Her crystalline body rang like a bell as she moved. High Counselor, our analysis suggests these beings operate on principles completely alien to galactic civilization. They do not respond to communication attempts. They do not negotiate. They simply consume everything in their path. Counselor Vex Alpha Prime of the Machine Collective projected holographic data into the center of the chamber. Tactical analysis indicates the Devourers adapt to our weapons faster than we can develop new ones. Their bioships evolve during combat. Energy weapons that destroy their vessels in the first engagement become useless by the second engagement. Soft voice from the Peaceful Wanderers representative carried across the chamber. Surely there must be some way to communicate with them. All intelligent life seeks understanding. They understand perfectly, came a harsh voice from the back of the chamber. It was Admiral Korthviga of the Star Guard, the closest thing the galaxy had to a military force. They understand that we are food. They understand that our worlds are resources to be harvested. They understand that our technology makes us worth consuming. There is nothing else they want to understand. The chamber erupted in hundreds of different voices speaking dozens of languages. Fear filled the air like a physical presence. Species that had known peace for millions of years were suddenly facing the possibility of extinction. High Counselor Rathmaran raised her arms for silence. Admiral Korthviga, What is the current status of our defensive fleets? The Admiral's 4 eyes focused on the data streaming across his personal display. We have withdrawn all remaining forces to the core defense line. 47 worlds are under evacuation. The Devourers have begun consuming not just planets but entire stars. They are using stellar matter to fuel their reproduction cycles. How long until they reach the core worlds? Asked a representative from the Healer caste. At their current rate of advance, 18 months. Perhaps less if they continue to accelerate their expansion. The silence that followed was deafening. 18 months until the heart of galactic civilization was under direct attack. 18 months to find a solution that had eluded them for 6 months of increasingly desperate warfare. Counselor Zen Theta of the Peaceful Wanderers stood slowly. High Counselor, there is one option we have not yet considered. Speak, Rathmaran replied. The humans! The chamber erupted again. This time the voices carried anger as well as fear. The humans were still a subject of heated debate within the council. Their solution to the Kepler 442b crisis had been effective but brutal. Many species questioned whether beings who would attack criminal organizations without formal authorization could be trusted with galactic security. The humans are barely out of their primitive phase, protested a representative from the ancient builders. They have been spacefaring for less than a century. What could they possibly offer against a threat that has defeated our most advanced fleets? Admiral Korthviga's voice cut through the noise. They think differently than we do. They approach problems from angles we cannot predict, and they are very, very good at warfare. Warfare is not the answer to every problem, came a voice from the Empathic Union representative. Violence only breeds more violence. Tell that to the 17 dead star systems, the Admiral replied coldly. High Counselor Rathmaran considered the options before her. The galaxy's traditional methods had failed completely. Diplomatic contact was impossible. Economic pressure meant nothing to beings who consumed entire worlds. Cultural exchange was irrelevant when the other side saw you only as food. Summon the human representative, she said finally. Admiral Elena Vasquez arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters 12 hours later. She came aboard a human destroyer escort that made many of the council members nervous. Unlike the smooth, elegant ships of galactic civilization, the human vessel was clearly designed for war. It bristled with weapons and armor plating. Even its peaceful approach to the station looked somehow threatening. Elena stepped into the council chamber wearing the dark blue uniform of Earth's space fleet. She was a compact woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Behind her walked 2 aides and a translator, though Elena spoke Galactic Common well enough to follow most discussions. High Counselor, Elena said, offering a crisp military salute. You summoned us to discuss the Devourer threat. Admiral Vasquez, Rathmaran replied. The Galactic Council faces the greatest crisis in our recorded history. We are prepared to offer humanity full membership in galactic civilization in exchange for your assistance in this matter. Elena studied the massive displays showing the advancing red zones. Her expression remained neutral, but her aides were taking notes on everything they saw. What kind of assistance are you looking for? Military advice, Admiral Korthviga said bluntly. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons become useless after one engagement. Our tactics are predictable to them. We need a new approach. You need someone who thinks like a predator, Elena said quietly. Your entire civilization is built on the assumption that all intelligent life is fundamentally reasonable. The Devourers are not reasonable. They are a hive mind focused on one goal: growth through consumption. A representative from the spiritual collective spoke up. But surely there must be some way to reach them. Some common ground we can find. Elena turned to look at the speaker. The common ground is that they want to eat you, and you do not want to be eaten. That is not a basis for a negotiation. The chamber fell silent. Elena walked closer to the central displays, studying the tactical information with a professional. Show me the combat records. I want to see how they fight. For the next hour, Elena reviewed battle recordings from dozens of engagements. She watched Devourer bioships adapt to galactic weapons in real time. She saw how they consumed destroyed vessels and incorporated new technology into their own forces. She studied their movement patterns and tactical decisions. "They are very smart," she said finally. "But they are also predictable in their own way. They always choose the most efficient path to consumption. They always adapt using the same basic principles. And they always assume their enemies will fight the same way every time." "What are you suggesting?" High Counselor Rathmaran asked. Elena smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "I'm suggesting that we stop fighting them the way they expect. No more fleet engagements. No more standing battles. No more predictable tactics. Then how do we fight them?" Admiral Korthviga demanded. "We make them come to us. On our terms. In places where their adaptability works against them instead of for them." Elena turned to address the entire chamber. "The Devourers have one weakness. They cannot resist consuming new resources. They always move toward the largest concentration of matter and energy they can detect. We can use that against them." Over the next several hours, Elena outlined a strategy that horrified many council members. She proposed abandoning entire sectors to the Devourers while secretly seeding those regions with deadly surprises. Automated weapons that would activate only after being consumed. Nanoscale viruses designed to attack Devourer biology. Stellar engineering projects that would turn stars into weapons. "This is monstrous," protested the representative from the healer caste. "You are talking about sacrificing entire worlds." "Those worlds are already lost," Elena replied without emotion. "The Devourers will consume them whether we fight there or not. The question is whether we use their consumption to our advantage." But Elena's most radical proposal was yet to come. "We need to think like them. We need to become unpredictable. That means every human fleet operates independently, with full authority to modify tactics in real time. No central command. No unified strategy that they can adapt to." "That is chaos," said Counselor Vex Alpha Prime. "Military forces require coordination and central planning. Military forces that fight conventional enemies require coordination," Elena corrected. "The Devourers are not conventional enemies. They learn from every conventional response. We need to be unconventional." The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Many species were reluctant to trust their survival to human military thinking. But as more reports arrived from the advancing Devourer fleets, fear overcame philosophical objections. The vote was close, but humanity was given operational command of the galactic defense effort. Elena was promoted to Supreme Commander of Allied Forces and given unprecedented authority to modify defensive strategies as needed. Within a week, human military advisors were working with every species in the galaxy. They taught alien crews to think tactically instead of systematically. They showed galactic engineers how to build weapons that were deliberately unpredictable. They trained diplomatic species to fight like predators. The first test of human strategy came when the Devourers reached the Sigma Draconis system. Instead of meeting them with a defensive fleet, Elena had evacuated the system and filled it with automated weapon platforms that looked like mining equipment. When the Devourers began consuming the abandoned machinery, the weapons activated. But Elena had prepared for the Devourers' adaptation ability. The weapons were designed to destroy themselves after a single use, preventing the enemy from learning their specifications. More importantly, each weapon was completely different from the others. The Devourers could not adapt to random, one-time attacks. The battle lasted 6 days. When it was over, the Devourer fleet had lost 30% of its bioships. More importantly, they had wasted weeks trying to adapt to weapons that no longer existed. For the first time since the crisis began, the enemy advance had been slowed. Elena stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Retribution, as reports came in from across the galaxy. Human-led fleets were engaging Devourer forces using tactics. That changed with every battle. Some fights lasted minutes. Others lasted weeks. No 2 engagements followed the same pattern. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, We are receiving surrender requests from 3 Devour splinter fleets. They are asking for negotiations, Elena smiled grimly. Tell them we do not negotiate with food. The war was far from over. But for the first time, the galaxy had an enemy that thought like the Devours themselves. Humanity had brought something to galactic civilization that it had never possessed before, the ability to be as ruthless as their enemies when survival was at stake. The question now was whether the galaxy would thank them for it or fear them because of it. 1 year after the Devourer War ended, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Omega Station, the new military headquarters orbiting Earth. Through the massive, transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going. Sleek ethereal collective vessels shared docking space with angular machine collective cruisers. Crystal-mined exploration ships refueled alongside peaceful wanderer medical frigates, but the most common sight was mixed crews. Alien officers served aboard human warships. Human tactical advisors worked on bridge crews that had never seen combat before the Devourer crisis. The galaxy had learned that survival sometimes required uncomfortable changes, Captain. Sarah Chun entered the observation lounge, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the Galactic Defense Force. She had been promoted to oversee training operations for the new, integrated military. Admiral, the morning briefing is ready. Elena nodded but continued looking out at the busy space traffic. Sarah, do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Which part, ma'am? Saving the galaxy from extinction or teaching peaceful species? How to fight. Both, neither. Elena turned away from the window. A year ago, these species had never fired a shot in anger. Now they are building warships and training soldiers. We changed them. Sarah was quiet for a moment. They were going to die, Admiral, all of them. Sometimes change is the only alternative to extinction. The 2 women walked toward the briefing room, passing through corridors that bustled with activity. Human engineers worked alongside crystal mine technicians to develop new weapon systems. Peaceful wanderer medics learned battlefield medicine from human combat doctors. Machine collective analysts studied human tactical manuals to understand. Intuitive decision-making, the briefing room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. High Counselor Rathmaran attended via hologram from the Galactic Council chambers. Admiral Korthviga was present in person, his 4 arms gesturing as he discussed fleet deployments with Colonel Rodriguez, who had been promoted to head Galactic Intelligence Operations. Admiral on deck, Sarah announced as Elena entered. The room came to attention with a mixture of human military precision and alien attempts to copy the gesture. Elena took her seat at the head of the conference table. Status report, Colonel Rodriguez. Rodriguez activated the holographic display showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Most sectors glowed green, indicating peace and stability. A few yellow zones marked areas of minor conflict or tension. Only 3 red zones remained. The Outer Rim cartels have been quiet since we destroyed their main fleet last month, Rodriguez reported. The Savage Worlds conflict is contained to the Vega sector. And we have a new situation developing in the Andromeda approach vectors. Elena studied the display. Andromeda? That is outside our galaxy entirely. Yes, ma'am. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures consistent with Devour bioship technology. It appears some of them escaped our final offensive and regrouped in dark space between galaxies. The room fell silent. The Devourer War had been declared over when their main hive clusters were destroyed, but Elena had always known that some elements might have survived. The universe was vast, and the Devourers were nothing if not persistent. High Counselor Rathmaran spoke from her hologram. Admiral Vasquez, the Galactic Council has discussed this possibility. We are prepared to authorize a preemptive strike force to investigate and neutralize any remaining Devourer presence. Elena looked around the table at faces that represented dozens of species. A year ago, none of them would have considered authorizing a preemptive military strike against anyone. The old Galactic Council would have sent diplomatic missions and cultural exchange programs. They would have assumed the Devourers could be reasoned with, given enough time and understanding. How many ships are we talking about? Elena asked. Admiral Korthviga consulted his datapad. Initial reconnaissance suggests a force of at least 50 bioships, possibly more hidden in the dust clouds between galaxies. They appear to be building some kind of structure. A breeding facility, Elena said immediately. They are preparing for a return invasion. How long do we have? Rodriguez ran calculations on his display. Based on observed devourer reproduction cycles, 18 months to 2 years before they have enough ships for another galactic assault. Elena stood and walked to the galactic map. She studied the position of the Andromeda approach vectors, calculating distances and response times. We need a strike force capable of operating independently for months. Deep space combat with no supply lines, no backup, no retreat if things go wrong. Admiral, came a soft voice from the healer caste representative, surely we should attempt. Communication first. These devourers may have learned from their defeat. They may be open to negotiation now. Elena turned to look at the alien being. Dr. Senna Prime had been one of the most vocal opponents of human military methods during the war, but she had also seen her entire home system consumed by the devourers before the tide was turned. Dr. Senna Prime? Elena said gently. What do you think the devourers learned from their defeat? The healer's pale features shifted as she considered the question. Perhaps they learned that we are not easy prey. They learned that we are dangerous when cornered, Elena corrected. They learned that we have weapons they did not expect. They learned that we can adapt faster than they anticipated. But they did not learn to see us as anything other than food. They are regrouping because they believe they can win next time. Captain Chen stepped forward. Admiral, I volunteer to lead the strike force. Negative. I will lead this mission personally. Elena looked around the table again. This is not a job for a subordinate. If we are going to hunt the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, they should face our best. High Counselor Rathmaran's hologram flickered as she leaned forward. Admiral, the Council cannot risk losing you in a deep space mission. You are too valuable to the galactic defense effort. Elena smiled grimly. High Counselor, with respect, that is exactly why I have to go. The Devourers are not a problem that will go away if we ignore it. They are not a diplomatic issue that can be resolved through negotiation. They are a clear and present danger to every living being in this galaxy. And sometimes the only way to deal with a clear and present danger is to eliminate it completely. The planning session that followed lasted 8 hours. Elena assembled a strike force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The core would be human ships and crews, but each vessel would carry specialists from other species. Crystal Mind. Navigation experts who could plot courses through intergalactic space. Machine collective engineers who could maintain systems during months-long missions. Peaceful wanderer medics who understood alien biology well enough to keep mixed crews healthy in deep space. Most importantly, each ship would carry ethereal collective telepaths. The Devourers operated as a hive mind. The only way to truly defeat them was to understand how they communicated and coordinated their actions. 3 weeks later, the strike force departed from Omega Station. 12 ships carrying the best military minds from across the galaxy. Elena commanded from the UES Retribution, now upgraded with technology from a dozen different species. The ship represented everything the galaxy had learned about combining different approaches to problem solving. The journey to the Andromeda approach vectors took 6 weeks. During that time, Elena drilled her crews relentlessly. Human tactical thinking merged with alien technical expertise. Species that had never worked together learned to function as unified teams. By the time they reached their target zone, they were no longer a human fleet with alien advisors. They were something new, a truly galactic military force. The Devourer facility was larger than Elena had expected. The bioships were constructing what looked like a massive space station using material harvested from destroyed planets. The structure pulsed with organic energy, clearly alive and growing. Intelligence estimates suggested it could produce new bioships at an exponential rate once fully operational. Time until the facility becomes operational? Elena asked her science officer. Lieutenant Commander Thekvera, a crystal mind officer, studied the readings carefully. Approximately 6 standard months, Admiral. After that point, they will be able to produce enough ships to threaten the galaxy again. Elena nodded. 6 months was not enough time to return to galactic space, gather a larger fleet, and come back. They would have to stop the Devourers here. And now, with the force they had, all ships, battle stations. We go in fast and hard, target the facility's core structure. Secondary targets are the largest bioships. Remember, they will adapt to our weapons, so make every shot count. The battle that followed lasted 14 hours. Elena's ships attacked in waves, each using completely different tactics. Some focused on long-range bombardment. Others closed to knife-fighting range. Several ships used ramming attacks, sacrificing themselves to destroy key facility components. The Devourers fought with desperate fury. They knew this was their last chance to rebuild their forces. Bio ships swarmed around the human fleet like angry insects. But Elena had learned from the First War. Her ships did not fight like a coordinated fleet. They fought like individual predators, each captain making independent decisions based on human instinct rather than galactic tactical doctrine. When the facility finally exploded, the blast was visible from 3 star systems away. The remaining Devourer bioships scattered into deep space, but they were too few to pose a serious threat. Elena's strike force had accomplished what the entire Galactic Council thought impossible. They had hunted down and eliminated an existential threat before it could mature. The journey home took 2 months. When the battered strike force finally arrived at Omega Station, they were greeted by representatives from every species in the galaxy. The celebration lasted for days. But Elena found herself standing again on the observation deck, looking out at the busy space traffic. Captain Chun joined her as she had a year earlier. "Any regrets this time, Admiral?" Sarah asked. Elena considered the question carefully. The galaxy is safe. The Devourers are extinct. Peace has been preserved. No, I have no regrets about that. But look at what we have become. Elena gestured toward the docking bays where mixed crews were unloading equipment from returning patrol ships. Every species in the galaxy now has a military. Every world has defense installations. Every trade route has escort vessels. We saved them, Sarah, but we also changed them into something they never wanted to be. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Maybe that is what growing up means, learning that the universe is not always a safe place. Learning that sometimes you have to fight to protect what you love. Elena nodded slowly. The galaxy has grown up. And we were their teachers. A year later, Elena received a report that made her smile for the first time in months. The peaceful wanderers had made first contact with a new species in the outer rim, but instead of sending a diplomatic mission, they had sent a combined exploration and defense fleet. When the new species showed signs of aggression, the peaceful wanderers had been ready. The galaxy had learned that peace was not the absence of conflict. Peace was the presence of beings willing to fight for it. And humanity had taught them how to be those beings. Elena looked up at the stars and felt satisfaction. The galaxy was no longer innocent, but it was alive. And sometimes that was the most important thing of all.